Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call tonight's public hearing of the planning board to order at 6:03 p.m. on Wednesday, February 12th. Tonight, we're holding a public hearing to discuss a couple of proposed zoning changes. So the formality is the reading of the legal ad starts off. Okay, so planning board of Whately will hold a public hearing pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, the Zoning Act, Section 5, on February 12th, 2025 at 6 p.m. to discuss proposed zoning changes. The hearing will take place in the main conference room at Whately Town Offices, which is here for Sandy Lane, and virtually via Zoom. Here we are. The board is proposing to replace the current section 171.27 flood hazard overlay district regulations with a new 171-27 floodplain overlay district to be in compliance with state and federal regulations. We're proposing to amend section 171.34 adult use recreational and medical marijuana establishments, adding the definition for marijuana product like manufacturer, setting dimensional requirements for marijuana product like manufacturers, and prohibiting use of materials classified as hazardous or flammable for the purpose of manufacturing marijuana products on site. And to amend section 171-8 table of use regulations, allowing marijuana product like manufacturer by special permit in the commercial, industrial, and industrial districts. The wording of all of this has been posted online and available here at Whately Town Offices. So the way we're going to proceed tonight is we're going to take up first the flood hazard overlay district bylaw. I'll see if there are any public comments, see if there's any questions from the planning board, and then we'll move on. I see Judy's joining. Right. So yes, so it'll be the order of business. So I've opened the public hearing. We'll have the discussion of all of these zoning amendments. Hear public comment and input. And then assuming we're ready to, there would need to be a motion to close the public hearing. And then, and only after we've closed the public hearing, we would deliberate on both bylaws, and ultimately what is before us to do with respect to both of the bylaw proposals is to have a motion and vote on whether to recommend, not recommend, or take no position on them. And that informs the brief report that we send on to the select board about them. Okay, clear on the process. And JD, you're online, you're following us. Okay.
I've got a sick little girl next to me, so.
Oh, bummer.
Yep.
Okay, very good. And so we're starting with the floodplain overlay, flood hazard overlay district regulation. I do have Nadia Matt here from, she's the floodplain management specialist at DCR. She's been working with us closely in all of this. What I'm going to do, because this particular proposal has been worked through the planning board now for quite some time, I don't know that we have any additional comments or questions. The room here in town offices is empty, and I don't see any other members of the public besides Judy. So I'll simply ask if Judy's here with respect to the floodplain hazard overlay district regulation and would have any comments or questions about that, because you're basically the only other member of the public, Judy.
No, I have no questions.
Okay, very good. As I said, I was prepared to summarize the bylaw. We had people here. I will just remind everybody that it's been through many rounds of review with the state. It's passed muster with Whately's town council. We've made all the required changes. The state believes that it has told us that it's compliant. Basically, Nadia, maybe I just sort of give you the floor if there's anything that you want to say to the board regarding this before we move on to our next bylaw topic, and I release you to go on with your regular life.
I'm just here to answer any questions, and provide any answers that Whately might still have.
I think we're pretty good. I think we know why we're doing this. I think it's ready to go. So, okay. Nadia, thanks for coming. Probably a
Thank
very
you.
short and sweet. Okay, very good. All right, so the public hearing remains open, and now we're turning to the second bylaw amendment proposal. I'm gonna do. And I know Isaac Fleischer is here. There is something that I want to discuss with the board and with Isaac before I open this to comments and questions. I want to share this marked up document. So what we can do, so since we posted the public hearing notice and we had something in final form, we did get feedback from town council on the wording. Some what I would consider to be fairly minor wording changes to the basically to the definition. And you can see in this view, you can see, oh, and of course, our town council corrected us in terms of the numbering that we should be using, not only here and in the annual town meeting warrant, depending on, so what you know is at the special town meeting in November, the town code, including zoning bylaws, was codified and renumbered, but we're still waiting for Attorney General approval. Thus, the old numbering, the existing numbering is what we're working with. So the town council did just adjust the undid edits that I've made to reflect the new numbering and he restored the old numbering. That's not particularly consequential. And then he made changes. The only changes he made was to wording in the definition. You can sort of see the markup, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply turn on the no markup version so we can see what the definition would be after it were we to accept all of the town council's recommendations. I forwarded this to Isaac, Jared for their review. And so this is an opportunity to, and I'll open the floor to Isaac. Basically what I want to do is make sure we have agreement on what the actual proposal is, deal with any other questions and comments, and go from there. So Isaac and Jared, do you have any concerns or questions about the edits that town council has proposed to the definition?
No, the edits are all completely satisfactory. If there is if we have a moment during this meeting, Jared did prepare something similar to the last meeting regarding to try to demonstrate how a solventless extraction method, which is what's being proposed for this marijuana product light manufacturer, how solventless extraction differs from your more standard chemical extraction methods.
Good. Well, so we'll return to that subject. So I think what we're going to agree on is that we're, in terms of what we're discussing and potentially voting on later tonight, this is going to be, we're going to agree to accept the changes proposed by town council to the definition. And so you're good with that.
Yes.
So I don't think we're going to, we can deal with making this efficient through the vote. We do that. The only other change or addition that town council made to what we forwarded is just that he clarified where in the table of use regulations this row would go. All right, so he clarified that it would be added in the light industrial uses category after the marijuana manufacturer or registered marijuana dispensary item, right? And I did have some question about whether that is appropriate, and the feedback was that yes, it belonged, although we're permitting this by special, or the proposal is to permit this by special permit in the commercial district. That doesn't make it something that would be moved into the commercial uses category. It still could be considered light industrial.
Mhm. Just actually one question about the revisions, and they're all, we're perfectly happy to accept them as proposed. I'm just curious what would happen if the new numbering on the bylaws is approved by the Attorney General before, and then subsequently this amendment was approved. How would the numbering be reconciled?
So there are different ways that it could be handled. Again, a lot of it depends on timing. The numbering doesn't really matter tonight because we have traceable references to sections in the zoning bylaws. I mean, there's a worst case scenario in which case, say, the Attorney General's office approves the codification, hours or days before annual town meeting, in which case we just do this as a floor amendment of the number. But I think there are other more streamlined ways to just deal with the numbering issue. So it's not going to be a concern.
Thank you.
Okay. Very good. So we now know what we're talking about. I think because Jared's presentation has been presented to the board before, what I would ask, since really, once again, as far as I can tell, Judy is the only member of the public attending tonight who might not have seen that presentation or might be interested in it or might not. So I would ask Judy, you're here, you wanna, I can simply give you the floor if you have questions or comments, or if you think it would be helpful to you with respect to what you're here for tonight, to hear Jared's presentation. I'm happy to kind of get your input on that.
No, I don't think I need to hear the presentation. Thank you for the offer.
Okay. Like I said, I think the board, we know what's there. I mean, Jared, is there anything new in the presentation that you think is worth us hearing tonight as part of tonight's public hearing?
I wouldn't say significantly so. I mean, so I can explain what solventless extraction is as opposed to, solvent-based extraction. But if that's not of significant importance, then we can keep moving. I'm happy to, as you said, Brent, to share the presentation that I shared last time that just compares some of the uses that we would put it to for cannabis that are very, very similar to uses that are already permitted in the commercial space.
So I think we'll just table that for now, and if there's anything that we need to refer to during tonight's meeting, we can bring that back up. But that may be useful if this goes to town meeting. Okay, thank you. So Judy, you're a member of the public tonight. What are your comments or questions about this bylaw proposal?
Thank you. Could you stop sharing maybe?
Oh, sure.
I think when this came up before, I was obviously on the board. And I voted to take that the planning board should take no position. I have changed my mind, and I strongly encourage you to vote this out with an unfavorable opinion. Couple things have changed. Some of them I just simply woke up to. But there is one very significant change in the outside world that I think affects this. First of all, for some reason, we didn't spend much time, if any time, before talking about the setback. I don't remember discussing that at all. I think if we had discussed it, I probably would have voted against going forward for the favor, even with no opinion at that point. When, and I'm sure Sarah will remember this, when the planning board voted to allow the 20-foot setback for marijuana distribution, we had a long agonizing discussion about that. It was not a decision we came to easily. And we justified it based on the fact that everything was all wrapped up and packaged pretty much, that there was nothing going on there that would not go on in a normal commercial retail store. We were selling product. The product was a given product. We would never, ever have done that shorter setback for a light manufacturing. And I still feel personally that it's totally inappropriate. 20 feet is the setback that the town requires for a driveway from the lot line. It's very, very short. And commercial, most of the town's commercial property abuts residential zones. And it's especially inappropriate for that. Maybe Sarah, you could share that document I left with you. I was on a quest for a solar project for the battery storage bylaw. I was reading through section 40A, and I came across this section on.
Can you make that full screen?
Yeah.
So I can.
It's a 40A is the part of the Mass General zoning laws that outlines the things that can be done with, or what planning boards can do and what they can't do. And this is it's not directly analogous. I mean, it's analogous, but it's certainly not the same thing. And I don't pretend that it is. It's about research and development, limited manufacturing. And it says that you can allow, in fact, limited manufacturing in a zone in any non-residential zoning district, which is not a residential, agricultural, or open space district. Now, that of course is pretty awkward wording, like most of 40A, but I think that our commercial district, since it does in fact also allow as a use both agricultural and residential, would not be included here. So that's one point. And we're not talking the same business. I understand that. The second point is when they get to research and development, limited manufacturing, they say no manufacturing activity occurs within 50 feet of a residential district. And I take this as sort of a guideline on appropriateness for limited manufacturing of something that, you know, may have chemicals, may not, but it's just, you don't do this within 50 within less than 50 feet. So that's one thing. My second point is about the similar businesses, limited manufacturing, that are allowed in the commercial district. And I wonder, I know we didn't do this with the last review, and I don't know if you have done it since, but I took a look at the commercial businesses that are not allowed in the commercial district. And interestingly, they include car washes and laundromats. There are a couple, also gasoline stations, but those arguably involve hazardous materials. To the best of my knowledge, neither laundromats or car washes involve anything more hazardous than soap. But they do use a lot of water. They process a lot of materials. And Whately bans them, and they ban them because of the perceived threat to the groundwater. And that section, those bylaws were added in 1991 at the time, just following the well pollution in Whately. Also, if you look, I think it's important, I don't know if you considered this, but a goodly number of the parcels in the commercial district are also in the aquifer protection district. I didn't do a calculation, just eyeballing it. I thought maybe 15-20%, but the whole southern end of the district is in the aquifer protection district. So I think you need to be concerned about contaminants. They aren't necessarily hazardous material, but they do jeopardize groundwater and, in case of the aquifer protection district, drinking water. And if you look at Whately's, the definition of hazardous materials in the basic definition in the bylaw, in the definition section, it leads off that hazardous materials are those that provide a threat to water and health. And then you might have it somewhere there, Grant. It's on page 108 and it's printed. Anyway, I can read it. Any substance with such physical or infectious characteristics as to pose a potential hazard to existing or potential water supplies or to human health. Hazardous materials include, but are not limited to, toxic chemicals, heavy metals, radioactive or infectious waste, those one would expect. Then acids, alkalis, pesticides, herbicides, organic solvents, and thinners. Acids and alkalis, that could be vinegar, salt. When I lived in Weston, the town wells there were polluted by the state. They happened to be at the junction of Mass Pike and Route 128, and road salt polluted them. So I think one needs to be careful in thinking about hazardous materials as including more than just toxic or flammable materials, which appears to be the thrust of this amendment or this proposal. My third point, and I think this is where things have really changed. When we considered this proposal before, there was a rumor that the town was applying for a grant to study the area around Sugarloaf Shops to see how it could be revived as a commercial center. Since that time, the town did get the grant. It got a $59,000 grant, which it used to hire Berkshire Design Group to conduct a study. It's called the Exit 35 study. I was the planning board's representative on the committee, to evaluate what could be done to make this a more vibrant area with more foot traffic. And the goal was really foot traffic. We talked a lot before about how limited commercial zoning spaces are in Whately. And I think that's still true. We haven't gained any. And that it would be a mistake to take the few that we have and expose them to a different use. What we now have is a situation, oh, and I should go back to the Exit 35 committee. There was a basic study and then a follow-up study looking at marketing potential. And I believe you have copies of both of those. The marketing study was fascinating and went through traffic patterns and kinds of businesses that are underrepresented in the area, businesses that are overrepresented. And preliminarily recommended some zoning changes. They would include mixed use housing or mixed use zoning, which is commercial on the first floor and housing on the second floor, which presumably would make the units cheaper to build. It would include changing the parking so that there's more parking, and some other things. And the next step with this study is to hire a zoning consultant to make really firm zoning recommendations, prioritize zoning recommendations. That got held up because Sylvie left and Erica came in the beginning of December and has been swamped. But I think on her list is to apply for a grant or maybe a DLTA grant to conduct that zoning, make those zoning recommendations. Simultaneously, Deerfield and Sunderland have gotten funding for a study of a bike path that would go from the Whately Park and Ride parking lot over to Sunderland, past Mount Sugarloaf. It would go straight to, presumably, to downtown Sunderland. That bike path has to go right through this Sugarloaf shop area, thereby actually bringing traffic. Now, I can't tell you how much a marijuana manufacturing building facility in this area would put a damper on all this. I mean, who's going to want to live so close? And it also takes away a potential commercial use. And it's just exactly the wrong time to be doing this. Just a terrible time. One thing you are finding if you make a positive recommendation on this proposed bylaw is that it is good for the health, safety, and well-being of Whately. And I really don't see that it does any of those. It still lacks the ongoing inspections that we tried to get last time. I know that the argument is that the CCC will inspect. We know they're understaffed. We know also that when they do inspect, they will inspect for state laws. They will not be concerned about enforcing Whately zoning. This will apply to all sorts of people, not just the MTC. You have to be aware of that. The building could change hands. There's no ongoing way to ensure that they're doing what they say they're doing. And I'm not convinced that what they're saying they're doing is really as safe as it might be, although they admittedly are a long way away from the Aquifer Overlay District. So in my mind, I can't see that this proposal does anything for Whately. And I strongly urge you to vote it out with an unfavorable opinion. End of diatribe.
Okay, Judy, thank you for your comments and remarks. It feels appropriate at this time to ask Isaac and or Jared. You've had a chance to hear these comments and remarks. I'm sure you've been thinking about it and taking some notes. So would you like to provide your point of view in response to the comments that Judy made?
Yeah, I would love to. I understand the concerns, and I think they are valid concerns. I think it would have been useful if we had maybe done part of our presentation here, because we are unfortunately stuck with this word manufacturing. But we're well aware of the broad definition of hazardous chemicals in the Whately zoning ordinance, and we utilize that term intentionally because when we say solventless extraction, we mean solventless. This is the extraction process is mechanical. It uses ice and it's shaken. It really would have less chemicals on site than a car wash. The primary activity they would be doing here is assembling products. So the extraction piece of it would be minor, but even the extraction, there's no chemicals used. It's shaking it with ice. It really is night and day when compared to marijuana product manufacturing, and it's unfortunate that we're saddled with this manufacturing term. There is nothing. It is much more similar to the uses that we've mentioned before that are allowed in that district, such as, there would be less chemicals on site than a brewery, than a bottling plant, which I think is allowed. And we've gone printing and publishing, automotive repair and servicing shops. These are all things that are already allowed there. What we're proposing is much more similar to a commercial kitchen. They're going to be assembling their products. It's going to be happening in the basement beneath the existing retail. And I understand that this zoning ordinance would apply to more than just my client, but we've done our best to draft it as narrowly as possible so that even other applicants would be extremely limited in what they could do with this use. There would be no way that a passerby would be aware that these operations were going on, other than the same amount of smell that would be present at a retail. So, you know, if there is a retail already present, this would be no different than the processes and procedures that are already happening in the back of the retail. The reason that we're seeking this additional license, because they have a retail license at this location already, the reason they'd be seeking this additional form of a license is because for whatever reason, a retail license does not allow them to assemble vape cartridges and other products. They can package them, but they can't do the assembly. And so
I'm aware of
we've done
that.
it in our power to really make this narrowly tailored to that use.
I think
I don't know if you
to
want to add.
remind you that
Sorry.
you made the point yourself, but this would apply to all the commercial districts in town and to other companies. And we tried very hard to get a mention of ongoing inspections in the bylaw before and did not succeed. And I think if that had been there, you might have had a more favorable outcome then. With the other things going on, I think that's even more important now. You have the unfortunate timing problem that the world seems to be doing articles about, is my weed safe? And a lot of publicity about the few things that are being tested. I mean, I read someplace, or I heard that the typical state test for pesticides tests 16, and there's something like 200. There's an article in today's Globe about a grower in Hatfield suing Nurse Farms for polluting their fields accidentally with pesticides. And that article says that the state only tests for 12 pesticides. I looked at the state's testing, and it's certainly true that they're not testing for hundreds of pesticides. I don't know the exact number, but it looked to be under 24. So, and there are other contaminants, you know, vitamin supplements in gummies.
So I really do want to, I do want to try to drive the conversation and keep it focused. Make sure your input is clear. I think what you're saying, Judy, is you are opposed to the idea of allowing this particular use by special permit in the commercial district. You have no concerns about this use in the by special permit in commercial, industrial, and industrial, correct so far? You're not saying, in other words, this use does not belong in Whately.
No,
At
I'm not.
all.
No, I think it's
So-
fine in
so-
commercial, industrial, and industrial.
So
The
you're
setbacks
voting,
are big. They are well aware away from the Aquifer Protection District.
But they're not using I mean, we won't get into what is in the products that are going out to consumers.
Yeah.
You know, I obviously, you know, I work in this industry and believe that they're quite safe, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, I guess what's relevant to this is that retail is already allowed here. The products are going to the commercial district and being sold in the commercial district already. This use allows the operator to manually assemble the product at the site of the retail rather than doing it somewhere else and then bring it in. There are no additional chemicals involved in this process. There's absolutely nothing that would nothing that would endanger an aquifer for sure. It's
And
not
that-
going to be more detrimental than a retail would, which is allowed. And we intentionally picked the same setback as a retail has, because what we have in mind is a co-located, and it wouldn't make sense for this use to be on its own separate from a retail because it's so limited.
You
So
were
even
just,
though this would apply to other operators, it's not going to, it wouldn't be a sensible use in isolation. It really only makes sense co-located with a retail.
So I'm going to jump in because I have limited willingness to foster kind of a free-for-all dispute between, we've heard a member of the public present some valid input and comments. And some response to those comments from the proponent of the proposal. But I'd like to find out, because when I eventually, or assuming we close this public hearing versus continue it to another night, this is our opportunity as a board, while the public hearing is still open, to ask any questions that we might have of anyone here tonight. Because once we deliberate and once we close the public hearing, we are deliberating and we're reaching our own conclusions about what we want to do. Okay, so does JD or anyone here, based on the input we've heard or the responses, we have any questions? JD, I want to make sure, since you're a little at a disadvantage by being remote.
I'm good.
So I think what I'm prepared to do is hear a motion. Well, is there any reason why we need to continue this public hearing based on anything that we've heard tonight to another night? Okay. Very good. Then do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
I will make a motion to close this.
Sarah has moved
I
to
will
close the
second.
public hearing and Patty has seconded the motion. A roll call vote because we have JD remote, and I'll start with JD voting aye or nay to close the public hearing.
Aye.
Laura,
Aye. Aye.
and I vote aye. All right, so the public hearing is now closed. So now we're gonna deliberate on both of our position with respect to both of the proposed amendments. Okay, starting with floodplain bylaw. Excuse me, what's
Just
there?
close the,
Oh, stop sharing. Yeah, was I sharing or I was just looking at something on my screen here?
looks like it's closed anyways.
Okay, very good. Okay, so with respect to the floodplain overlay district bylaw, are we ready to have a motion and vote on? So again, what I want to hear is a motion either to recommend, a motion to not recommend, or a motion to take no position on the floodplain overlay district bylaw. So
I
somebody,
will very much recommend this. This has to be in place. It protects Whately. And it's been a long time ago.
okay, motion
Lots of
has
work.
been made.
I'll second that motion.
All right,
you.
all right. I'll give the
JD.
second, give the second to Patty on this. Okay. And so, yeah, last chance for discussion before we vote on the floodplain overlay district bylaw. Okay, hearing no discussion, we'll do a vote again by roll call. I'll start with JD. Now we're voting on the motion to recommend the floodplain overlay district bylaw to the select board.
Aye.
Aye.
Or
Aye.
Patty, second, and I vote aye, so it's unanimous. Okay, so now we're going to turn to the amended, revised the MCTC proposal. And this is our chance to deliberate. I don't wanna, I wanna moderate for the moment, so I just wanna, before I express any personal opinions or personal views, I wanna see. I'd like to just go around the table. We've heard Judy's comments, we've heard the various presentations, we know what we're dealing with. What are people's thoughts? Can I start with you, JD?
I'm not a user or consumer of marijuana products, but I know a lot of people that are, and they're good for them. I personally don't think it's a great use in that area. However, these folks have a right to bring it to us. And I guess my position would be to advance it with no position and let Judy make a very persuasive argument at town meeting. I'm very respectful of what she said tonight. She brings a lot of good points. And I think she has the right to bring it to town meeting and make those points right there and let the town people decide.
Thank you, JD. Sarah?
He took most of the words right out of my mouth. Yes. I really think this needs to come before the larger community. And I very much, think we do not have very much commercial property. And mixing that even more and diluting that even more is less opportunities for how we want to use any commercial property, because this will overflow and affect all commercial property, not just that specific location.
Right. Alright,
Well, being fairly new to this whole process,
yeah, it's fine.
you know, like you said, Judy's comments were very persuasive. I like the idea of, you know, not, standing kind of neutral on the whole thing. And bringing it up in front of the larger body of the town and letting it work its way out through that.
Laura?
I tend to agree. I think that there's arguments for and against this. I don't have a particularly strong opinion either way. I can see both sides of it. For me personally, I don't live in that area of town, so I would like for the townspeople to have the opportunity to speak on it, for better or worse, and especially, people who will be neighboring to this facility, they may have stronger feelings, and obviously, if you're even neighboring to other commercial properties in town, that you could at some point be affected by this change. I feel like those people are the ones that need to hear this. And, planning board meetings aren't always the most well attended by townspeople. So this is a good opportunity for people to, hear it for themselves, make a decision for themselves. So I really have no position, I guess.
So the four of you would be comfortable with taking no position on this
Right.
versus the Judy's input that we take an unfavorable position on this. Okay, my own position on this has been that, I think the MCTC is entirely entitled to bring this proposal to us. I don't see this, there have been in past discussions within the board, there are concerns expressed about sort of spot zoning and things of that nature. I don't really see it that way. I do understand that this proposal would affect not just the Sugarloaf shops where the proponents seek to take advantage of this potential new use, but others in town. I guess the way I thought about it, is that there are a lot of uses that are allowed in the commercial district that I probably wouldn't like to see a lot of them in the commercial district. But I feel like, to me, I've been persuaded by the presentations by DMCTC that this proposed use is very much akin to just, like, to use their terms, like a commercial kitchen, that I could see an operation like, my mind, Muffins, and it's adding some equipment and doing this in their facility. And it would particularly create any traffic or any nuisance or odors. It wouldn't be the kinds of things that if I were a resident in this area, I would feel that the quiet enjoyment of my property is threatened. But I'm very cognizant of the fact that, like all of you, I don't reside in the commercial district. I do know that a lot of people have different levels of sensitivity around marijuana as a material that is manufactured, bought, sold, and consumed. And I think through all of this, I've been looking at how our zoning bylaws treat other uses in the commercial district. I respect Judy's input. I just am not on this, I'm not bringing the same view to it that she does. But I do feel this is where the beauty of town meeting is it is public democracy at work. So I would recommend that we take no position on this. We forward this to the select board. We explained at public meeting why we've done that. And we allow Judy and others, Judy's not in the commercial district, but others who hopefully are attending town meeting and are in the commercial district, if they have particular concerns, they have the right to express them. This would have to pass a town meeting by a 2/3 majority, so enough people at town meeting would have to be persuaded that either it was either not particularly harmful enough to vote it down, or some people will see a potential upside to it. But I'd like to give that choice to the voters rather than cut it off here. I might have come to a different conclusion if there had been much more attendance, and more, more of a sort of a consensus public opinion against this. But right now, that's where I find myself. So then I'd like to hear a motion for the planning board to take no position on this zoning bylaw amendment. As, I guess, so I'm coaching you, who's ever making this motion with the wording, we're taking no position on this bylaw amendment proposal as revised tonight. We have agreed some wording changes. Somebody prepared to make that motion?
I will make the motion that the planning board will take no position on the proposed bylaw by DMCTC as amended, including the town councils.
Good,
And the possibility of numbering changes.
correct. Okay. Motion has been made, seconded by somebody.
I'll second it.
Oh, there you
I'm
go.
gonna let Laura take the second. All right, motion made in second, so we'll do a roll call vote. I'll start with JD.
Aye.
Aye. Laura.
Aye.
Patty.
Aye.
Sarah. Aye. And I'm aye. Okay, so we are done for the evening on these. There were no, to my knowledge, topics not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance. So just before I hear a motion to adjourn, next steps on both of these is that I will draft a very brief report to the select board, summarizing our position on these two bylaw amendments. And then it's over to them in terms of what ends up on the annual town meeting warrant. My understanding is annual town meeting is still scheduled to happen late April. I don't think I have an exact date yet, though I haven't checked the calendar, but they have not yet moved to delay it into March or
It's April
May.
29th, Grant.
April 29th. So that's the current schedule. Thank you, Judy. Okay, very good. So yeah, I'll do this report. And, oh, and one more thing before we adjourn. So the next regularly
I have just something that came up at CPC.
okay. And the next regularly scheduled meeting of the planning board, we will, I know you can't get enough of this, but we'll meet again in 2 weeks' time. Our regular meeting date at the end of February. And I think
On the
we'll have a
26th,
fairly, yeah, the 26th. We'll have a fairly short agenda, including discussing placing Sarah on the board at the end of her term. And maybe ADU bylaws, and this is for Judy's benefit, I've alerted everyone that either we, with or without any members present of the ESS study committee, will have a preliminary discussion of any draft battery energy storage bylaw proposal that's been developed under the auspices of the Energy Storage Systems Study Committee. Your thing, Sarah?
Just that there really isn't a housing committee right now, and that this is affecting many things. So, and you happen to be a small part of the existing.
Say that,
Judy, I'm sorry, it all flew out of my head. So where would our housing, where would it, just that we need to be aware, and if anybody in our travels has housing experience.
yeah. Yeah, we do not have a functioning housing committee at present, and I'm not even quite sure of the status of Whately's housing trust. But I believe
That is very
Fred and
not
Montserrat are both serving as the two trustees.
I discovered, talking to Pete yesterday, that the term for a trustee is 2 years. And I don't think the select board has appointed new trustees in years. It hasn't been on their rotation schedule, so. And there, unfortunately, is no representative to the CPC either, so. I think what Sarah's trying to say is if any of you know anyone. We planning board spent a lot of time working on zoning to promote housing and affordable housing. And as did the housing committee, and the committee isn't functioning. There's money in the CPA there's about $250,000 and potential just already dedicated. There's another 300,000 in unallocated money. There's the potential to borrow. I mean, there's money to do things, but there's nobody to recommend them.
Yeah, you're right, just the versatility of, and especially with the way law, and we really don't have the mobility in Whately without the housing.
Yeah, sure. Okay, with that, motion to adjourn, somebody?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, Laura's made a motion to adjourn. Does the other Ross want to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor, you can just like raise your hands and wave, JD. You can wave. All right, we are adjourned until our regular meeting in 2 weeks. Thank you all. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night. Bye now.
Thanks, guys.